Adam Smith was an 18th century Scottish economist, philosopher, and author, widely regarded as the father of economics, or the father of capitalism. Born in 1723 in Kirkcaldy, Scotland, Smith pursued studies at the University of Glasgow and later at Oxford. He is best known for his contributions to economic thought and his exploration of moral philosophy. His most famous work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, laid foundational principles for modern economics, including the idea that free markets can regulate themselves through what he described as the invisible hand of competition. Smith's works and ideas, particularly around laissez-faire economics and individual self-interest in market behavior, had a significant impact on later economists and the development of capitalist economies. The Wealth of Nations is a comprehensive examination of economic systems, trade, labor, and the ways societies create and distribute wealth. Smith's book argues that individuals working in their own self-interest unintentionally contribute to the public good, as their actions create supply, meet demand, and drive the economy forward. Smith details how competition within free markets naturally leads to price stability and efficiency in the allocation of resources, resulting in fairer outcomes than those produced by controlled or monopolistic markets. He also highlights the importance of labor specialization and the division of labor, which increases productivity and fosters economic growth. Throughout, Smith is critical of mercantilism, the dominant economic theory of his time, which focused on wealth accumulation through trade restrictions and tariffs. Instead, he advocated for free trade and minimal government intervention in markets. The Wealth of Nations explores themes that remain central to economics: how self-interest drives economic progress, the efficiency of market competition, and the benefits of a free market system. Smith believed that when people are allowed to pursue their own economic goals, they inadvertently promote collective prosperity, provided that there is fair competition. The work also addresses the complexities of wage determination, the impact of government policies on economies, and the moral implications of economic systems. The principles set forth in this book laid the groundwork for economic theories of capitalism, and its influence can be seen in the foundations of Western economic policies today. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith argues, among other things, that rural areas should be given priority over cities. Smith views the countryside as the breadbasket of the city, the latter being only a producer of luxury items and goods that are not fundamental to human survival. He is thus highlighting the fundamental economic relationship between rural areas, the countryside, and urban areas, the town. Smith believes that agricultural development and the ability of the countryside to provide food and raw materials are foundational to the economic stability and growth of a society. Only when the countryside has been sufficiently cultivated to meet the basic needs of the population can urban centers expand and focus on commerce, trade, and other pursuits that contribute to a higher quality of life but are not strictly essential for survival. Smith's observation also suggests that societies naturally progress in a particular order. First comes the development of agriculture, then the growth of towns and cities. This progression is based on the idea that rural areas produce essential goods, such as food and raw materials, that sustain life and support the growth of non-agricultural industries. Without a stable and productive agricultural base, urban growth would be unsustainable because the cities depend on the countryside for the subsistence of their populations. In Smith's view, therefore, a thriving agricultural sector is the bedrock of any prosperous economy, as it enables more specialized economic activities and the accumulation of wealth in urban centers. Smith's statement further reflects his belief in the division of labor and specialization. As agriculture in the countryside improves, producing more food and other essential goods, labor can be divided more efficiently, allowing people in urban areas to specialize in crafts, trade, and other services that enhance convenience and luxury. This division creates interdependence between rural and urban areas, where the countryside supplies the basics, and the town provides specialized goods and services. This symbiosis is crucial for economic growth and the improvement of living standards across society, with each area focusing on what it does best and trading with the other. Additionally, Smith's comment touches on the importance of prioritizing investments. For him, resources should be directed first toward ensuring that the agricultural base is strong and productive, as this will create the foundation for future economic expansion. If towns were to grow without sufficient support from agriculture, the result could be economic instability and potential shortages in food and materials. By improving the countryside first, a nation builds a strong infrastructure that can support a larger urban population and sustain economic development. Smith is presenting a vision of balanced economic growth, where the basics of life are secured before societies turn their attention to luxuries. The conveniency and luxury offered by towns are valuable, but they are secondary to the subsistence provided by the countryside. For Smith, a society's economic health and resilience depend on this foundational hierarchy, where agriculture supports urbanization and, in turn, urban growth brings benefits that can be reinvested to further improve both rural and urban life. This principle underscores Smith's belief in the natural order and stages of economic development and emphasizes the role of agriculture as the basis of a stable and prosperous society. Adam Smith's view that rural agricultural development should precede urban growth, while logical in the 18th century context, faces significant critique in light of modern economic developments, urbanization, and shifts in our understanding of sustainable development and economic interdependence between urban and rural areas. Critics argue that Smith's view on prioritizing agriculture as the basis for economic growth underestimates the role of urban areas in driving innovation, industry, and economic diversification. In the 21st century, cities have become hubs for technology, finance, and other industries that create substantial value independently of agricultural production. Modern economies often rely less on agriculture as a growth driver and more on urban-based sectors such as services, technology, and knowledge-based industries. These industries, which thrive in urban settings, contribute directly to economic growth and employment, showing that the role of cities extends beyond providing conveniency and luxury, as Smith suggested. His assumption that agriculture should be prioritized for the sustenance of economic stability also faces criticism. Today, rural areas are often not the sole providers of subsistence due to globalized supply chains and advanced transportation networks that allow cities to import food and materials from around the world. Urban centers in developed nations, for example, rely heavily on imported goods rather than domestic agriculture, yet remain economically strong. Critics argue that this shift undermines Smith's rural-urban dependency model, as it shows that urban economies can sustain themselves and thrive through global trade without needing a strong local agricultural base. Another critique comes from environmental and sustainability perspectives. Smith's model emphasizes the need to expand agricultural production to support urban growth, but such expansion has led to issues like deforestation, biodiversity loss, and soil degradation. Critics suggest that modern economies should focus on sustainable urban planning and reduce the environmental footprint of agricultural production rather than pursuing continual expansion. Urban agriculture, hydroponics, and vertical farming are now viable alternatives that allow cities to produce food within their limits, challenging Smith's notion that agriculture must be confined to rural areas. Moreover, Smith's view of rural-urban dynamics overlooks the current focus on rural revitalization and the declining population in rural areas worldwide. Urban migration and the concentration of job opportunities in cities have led to depopulation in many rural areas, weakening their economies and reducing agricultural production capacities. Critics argue that focusing exclusively on rural development to feed the cities without addressing the needs of rural populations themselves is unsustainable. Instead, they advocate for policies that support balanced development in both rural and urban areas, recognizing that urban areas are now essential for economic development, innovation, and population retention in rural areas. Smith's statement does not fully consider the modern interdependence between rural and urban areas, Today's economies operate in complex systems where the flow of capital, resources, technology, and labor is reciprocal rather than hierarchical. Urban and rural areas support one another through exchanges that create a balanced, interdependent economy rather than a one-directional model of rural support for urban growth. Critics argue that this interdependence is more resilient and sustainable in the long term, with both urban and rural areas mutually benefiting from investments in each other. In sum, Smith's Rural First framework, while historically relevant, does not capture the complexities, environmental concerns, and globalized exchanges that define contemporary rural-urban relationships.